Dead or Alive 6, we're on Xbox Series X. We've got some interesting options on this one. It inherits its Xbox One X enhancements, and with that we get two graphical options, both support HDR. The first is one that will prefer frame rate, where you're getting a 1080 at 60 FPS, but then interestingly enough, we're also getting a native 4K at 60 FPS target. So in the past it didn't really hit the mark when you were playing, but now on the Series X it actually seems to be running pretty fluidly from what I'm seeing. So this is actually what you're seeing at the current moment in time when it comes to visuals. We are prioritizing the graphics, and then I will let you know when we switch over to prioritizing the frame rate. So obviously if you want an absolute perfect frame rate the whole time, you know, you target the 1080 at 60, but honestly it seems like the 4K 60 is the way to go, because it seems to hit the mark most of the time. I can't really tell when I'm in there battling away at people, and I mean, it's a fighting game, so it's not necessarily the most complex of experiences. But anyways, this is Dead or Alive 6, the latest entry in the long-running fighting series, featuring some interesting character rosters and actually some really gorgeous environments with sort of, I guess you could say, really interactive stages in terms of doing like damage and destruction to them. And you get a wide range of characters and ways to play. So I think that's kind of interesting. And there's also like a really massive roster of maps, or at least I think so, for fighting titles. And then match that with a varied, and incredibly varied selection of fighters, along with extra fighters you can grab. I think they've got a really good setup here. I mean, it's clean, it's smooth, it's visually quite impressive. It's got a lot of detail to the environment, lots of different costumes to work towards. And it's Dead or Alive. It's a style of fighting that I think is more leg driven, if that's fair. You get some neat combo moves going, and it's just got really intense sort of hits and action. It's just generally quite well done. I did quite like this entry in the series. I did play, well, I started with 5. I know of 4. I've seen 4 in action, but my gameplay experience with the series really did start with 5 at the early end of the Xbox One generation. So it was kind of interesting to see 6 released towards the end, because there weren't many franchises that actually released multiple titles in the fighter genre. I actually can't even think of another one that released 2 in the generation, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, it was really neat to see this one appear, and I was like, oh, that's exciting to jump into this one from the get-go. So aside from just battling one another, you can jump into a plethora of modes. There's a lot of content present in this one, at least I think a fair bit. And yeah, it's actually quite interesting. I think we're still rolling with the higher resolution. Like, the visual quality in this one just looks absolutely fantastic. The particle effects, the characters, the designs. It's just really quite well done. But going back to the actual gameplay content, you know, there's branching narrative elements that you kind of go through this large web of choices and selections for the story, and all the different characters have little story elements that lean into one another. It's actually quite interesting how that's done. I think it's a little bit different from other fighting titles, and I thought that was kind of an interesting, you know, sort of experience and way to jump in there and see what this game has to offer. And hopefully you're seeing a wide range of characters throughout this showcase here, so that you can understand, you know, the visual quality and also the different designs and options that are present for the costumes and the looks of the characters. So there's also battling, you know, you could do so locally against the AI. There's like arcade mode, there's battling people online. You know, it really has the different options for fighting games that you would expect and anticipate when you are jumping into this sort of experience. At least I would think so. But yeah, you got some like really cool looking areas and everything like that. And we are at the mode, or the current point in time, where it's dropped down to prioritizing the frame rate. If you didn't know, but just kind of the dip in quality a little bit when it comes to the visual fidelity. It still looks pretty good, but yeah, you can definitely tell that there is a bit of a jump, and we did that a little bit back 1 or 2 fights ago. The starting few little clips were all of the higher resolution option, which was kind of, I think, running very smoothly. Now we're again, prioritizing frame rate, but you don't, like, it's interesting because you have that option, and clearly it's for the 1x, and it also kind of future-proof the game a little bit by having the higher, like, 4K. It's interesting that they would accept kind of choppy performance on the 1x and then allow, you know, the Series X really down the road to really take advantage of that option, and I think you're clear and good to play in that way. At least I think so, in terms of the quality and the performance and the fidelity. But of course, up to you if you need that absolute peak combative frame rate, you know, that's entirely up to you. But yeah, it's just kind of an interesting title. It's got a wide range of characters for the battles across the different modes and the interactions. Again, going back to the story, I don't know how enticing the narrative is. I know it's kind of got like a continuation of where things were in the past, and I think that's kind of neat. And yeah, it just kind of goes wild. There's so many like branching parts to it. It's really hard to specifically dive into a direct portion of the story. But yeah, I thought this was a pretty good fighting title. Definitely a different one. Like, there's so many in the genre that they kind of blend together a little bit. Like this this environment here is gorgeous too. I just want to highlight that the water, like well, I guess it's more of a Hawaiian vacation and or tropical paradise type of battling, which is kind of fun if you've played. I guess I've played that Dead or Alive too, haven't I? The extreme volleyball one, that was interesting. Yeah, it's a shame we don't get more of the, we don't get like the spin-off things here. But, you know, it is what it is. But yeah, you get some cool combo moves, neat ultimate abilities, a neat sense of like actual power in hitting your opponents. It's not too, like, I guess you could say gory, but it can get a little bit of leaning in that territory if you get to some of those really unleashed moves on players and hitting them really hardcore. I think that element kind of adds to it. And I hope the pacing here has been good for showcasing, you know, a wide variety of the characters and the costumes and the look. I also gotta say, like, the material and then the background, and we talked a little bit about it, like the interactivity is really cool, just in regards to how you sort of hit people within this environment, how you know, kind of use it, destroy things and smash stuff. It's not like super graphically intense in that regard, but it's just neat that you can kind of do that layering of combat in it. And it's neat to see the fighting games trying different things, I guess you could say, as time's gone by, just in regards to, you know, really how you hit your opponents and how you use the stage. Like, even there, like that guy kind of pushing the character that you're fighting back into the ring. I think that's kind of fun and a little bit different for sure. Oh, and here's the roster, you know, that's available, at least to me, and then of course unlocking all this content. There's just a lot to do in this one, a lot to see. Here's the loading in action, so you can kind of get an idea of how that's rolling. I thought it loaded decently well. I mean, it could have been faster, but it's pretty swift, right? You get into the match and you fight again. But that's about all I have to say for Dead or Alive 6. It's an interesting fighting title. I think it's maybe worth jumping into if you've had interest in the series. And of course, Dead or Alive 5 is also available too if you've kind of wanted to go back and see that one in action. It's neat that you have the multiple options. It'd actually be really interesting, and I don't know if they could ever pull this off, if backwards compatibility wise they'd be able to get even more available. We need to see like the whole legacy of a fighting franchise on the console, and I think there's ways, but it's limited overall. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this look at the game, and there's a couple more clips to follow.
Yay, I beat you!
Come on, let's do this! Down the hatch!